I'm Stargate Pioneer from the official GonnaGeek.com podcast, a proud member of the Gonna Geek Network, just like the one you're listening to now. The opinions expressed are those of each individual. Check out all the other podcasts at GonnaGeekNetwork.com and get ready because geekiness begins in 3, 2, 1.
Hey everyone, and welcome to episode 22 of Nerd Alert News. Before we get things started, I did want to extend a big thank you to my good friend, my co-host on various other podcasts, Neil. He did join me for the last episode, which was our speculation and our theories as to how the Flash and Supergirl crossover was going to work. So Neil, a big thank you for joining me, and I look forward to having you on a future episode of Nerd Alert News. But I guess it's time to actually roll into the show itself. It's always hard to keep on top of all the nerdy news that floods the internet, but that's where this show comes in. I'm going to do all the hard work. I'm going to find the news that you need to know. Nerd Alert News is basically meant to keep you in the know for all things good and nerdy. But with all that being said, why don't we just roll into the headlines? Let's start with some tech news this week, as Computer World is reporting that the Firefox OS is dead. Mozilla posted a blog post that gave some clarity on the future of the Firefox OS on smartphones. Development will cease after the release of version 2.6. Additionally, the Marketplace, which is Mozilla's home for apps designed for devices running Firefox OS, Firefox for Android, or Firefox Desktop, will stop accepting submissions. So you might be asking two questions. First one, why are they going to stop making Firefox OS? Second one, what the heck is Firefox OS? Which is kind of the problem you run into with the first question. Not a lot of people realize that Mozilla had kind of jumped on the bandwagon of everyone else of, let's establish a smartphone OS, it'll help our browser, to help us gain market share, things like that. Firefox OS wasn't seen in a lot of commercially available products, and in fact, I don't recall seeing it on many, if any, phones in North America. It was being marketed as a great alternative for a cheaper cell phone that could easily get people connected to things. We just never saw much of it here. I remember reading some tech articles, things like that, saying, hey, here's your look at Firefox OS on this phone. But there was never one of the big cell phone suppliers here in North America that I recall that I could go to and be like, oh, I have to have this Firefox OS smartphone, I need to try it. So it kind of doesn't surprise me that the Firefox OS is dying. So why is it dying, you might be wondering? Well, it's pretty much because it struggled to gain a foothold and gain any traction. Only a handful of Firefox OS devices hit the market, and basically Mozilla exited because they can't beat the big boys like Apple and Google, and yes, even Microsoft in this case. Microsoft Windows Phone is doing better than Mozilla's Firefox OS for phones. So officially, they are going to end development on Firefox OS for smartphones. As of March 29th, 2016, the Marketplace will no longer accept submissions for Android, desktop, and tablet. And then what is most certainly the final nail in the coffin of this OS, all staff involvement at Mozilla will cease in May on Firefox OS. So it's dead and gone, but most of you are probably going, I don't care. I only brought it up because it's kind of interesting to me, and I kind of held some hope of eventually getting to see a Firefox OS smartphone that I'd get to play with. And if you really want to, there's options. You can go on eBay or buy some third-party methods and bring it here to North America, but the problem is the hardware might not be compatible on cellular networks here. So it'd make a great toy to play around with on Wi-Fi and things like that, but at this point, I don't know that it really matters because it's dead and gone. Long live Android, long live iOS, and heck, long live Windows Phone because they beat Mozilla's Firefox. So we're going to stay in the tech sphere for this next story. Let's talk about Google Chrome. There's a story from Tech Times that came out that said Google is now going to block deceptive ads with download buttons in Chrome. Pretty good idea. So what's the big story behind this? Why is it important? Spammers, people that want to gain illegal access to your computer or make you download viruses and spyware and crap like that, they're getting smarter and smarter all the time. They're making sites look exactly like a legitimate one, putting a download button inside an ad, and people are thinking, oh, this is legitimate. I actually have Windows updates I need to do, and I'm being notified. It's not actually legitimate, but you can't help that some people are going to click on that. So what's Google going to do? They're expanding their safe browsing protection tool to block deceptive download buttons. They explained in a blog post that you may have encountered social engineering in a deceptive download button or an image ad that falsely claims your system is out of date. Today, we're expanding safe browsing protection to protect you from such deceptive embedded content like social engineering ads. So how do you get Google to protect you from these kind of ads? Well, it's simple. You pretty much have to be running Google Chrome for Windows or Google Chrome for Android, and it's baked into there at this point. Safe browsing is available for the Chrome browser, and it displays a warning screen to notify users when they're about to visit a harmful site. But what if you're not bought into the Google Chrome browser and that's not what you want to use? Well, you're okay if you're running Firefox and Safari, because Google also shared this safe browsing information in a safe browsing application that works on Firefox and Safari, so you can get the same perks that Google Chrome users are getting. So kudos to Google, number one, for sharing this across and building apps for other browsers. They were legitimately, in this case, trying to save people from downloading deceptive stuff, getting viruses, things like I mentioned before. It's a way to play nice, and it's some good PR. So let's say I'm rolling with Google Chrome, where I've got Firefox and Safari with the deceptive ad software installed. What is it going to look like? Or what's going to happen? Basically, what it's going to do, it's going to flag deceptive content and display obvious warnings regarding the malicious activities. The sample screenshot shows a big red screenshot that tells you, hey, there's malicious content here, you need to be aware of it. Here's what's also cool. At the same time, Google's also going to notify web page owners of the embedded content found on their pages. And if visitors regularly encounter such warnings on a website, Google's going to flag the whole website, and owners will then have to ensure everything is safe. So Google's going to kind of force hands here, because Google search is at the core of everything. Half the time when people want to go to a website, they don't type in the URL, they go to the search button, or they go to their Omnibox on their browser and just type in Facebook and do a Google search or a web search of some kind, then just click on the first link in there. So if Google is going to basically make it so that if your site has a bunch of these deceptive ads in it, they're going to pull it out of there. You're going to be harder to find. And that in turn motivates the website owners to ensure their sites are clean. I really like this move. I can see where some people, namely those that are trying to make you download these deceptive things, could be upset. But for the consumer, I see this as a win. I use Google Chrome, so it's not a big deal for me. It's already baked into the most recent update. But if I was using Firefox or Safari, I would go and download this just to be safe. I like to think I have enough common sense not to accidentally download an application I shouldn't, but I kind of like having this backup here, and in this case, it might be good that Big Brother's watching out for you. So I guess now it's that time in the show where I get to complain about a little something. And if you guys listen to another podcast I do called the Starling Tribune, shameless self-promotion I know, we touched on this topic a little bit, but there's an article over on bleedingcool.com where we found out that Deathstroke is unavailable to the Arrow team. He's not allowed to be in the show. So how'd this come about? Arrow showrunner Mark Guggenheim was answering questions on his Tumblr page about the TV show Arrow. He was asked specifically about Slade Wilson. The character is a fan favorite. He was brought up, and he was asked if he would see the return of that character to the Arrowverse. In one response, he announced the character, who's played by Manu Bennett, is no longer available to the show. What he wrote specifically was, the character of Slade Wilson is currently tied up in another DC project. So we don't know what that project is. The rumor is that Slade Wilson, Deathstroke, might show up in the Suicide Squad movie coming out later this year, but it is far from confirmed. But we do know from Mark Guggenheim's words that Slade Wilson is tied up in another DC project, so that's why we can't have him. That bums me out so much, because one of my favorite things about Season 1 and 2 of Arrow was the introduction of Slade Wilson and showing his descent into supervillainy and how he became twisted and was damaged by the Mirakuru and things like that. And he's arguably been one of the best villains in Arrow. Yes, you could also say Malcolm Merlyn also, but I personally, as much as I love John Barrowman, really enjoyed Manu Bennett's portrayal of Slade Wilson. I thought it was very well done, and I've been holding out hope this season that maybe we'll get a one-off episode where Slade comes back, or we'll see him again in a flashback in some way, shape, or form. But this kind of indicates it's not going to happen, and it bums me out because it's Arrow that made the character more mainstream again, that got everyone familiar with him, and now it's up. Now that you've made this character popular, you can't play with him anymore, guys, and it bums me out. And we've been seeing this with a few things with Arrow. They've been taking away toys from them. The Suicide Squad's not there anymore. And there was even, okay, we're going to get into a minor spoiler if you're behind on Season 3, a pivotal character was killed very quickly. This character will also be involved in the Suicide Squad movie. I'm trying not to name it and be vague, but you can probably figure it out. So a lot of people theorized, oh, they killed character X, again, I'm redacting the name, because DC told them they can't use it because of the Suicide Squad movie, Mark Guggenheim actually confirmed that they had plans to do that on their own. It was not mandated by DC. So they're not mandating that all characters stop being used, but it seems like they kind of made it so the Suicide Squad would get swept under the rug, and they've pretty much said that Deathstroke can't be used. And I'm really bummed about it. I know I'm not the only one, but if you're bummed about it too, please let me know. Send me a tweet, a message on Facebook, something like that. I would love to hear your feedback on whether you think it's legit that DC can tell them, no, you can't use Slade Wilson anymore, or whether you're just okay with the fact that they can't. I would love to know what you guys think. Stay tuned for the contact information at the end of the show, and please let me know your opinion. So let's move from a TV show in the DC universe to one in the Marvel universe. Rec News is reporting that things are looking a little grim for the future of Agent Carter, and they're predicting that it's probably going to be canceled. Why do they say that? Sources say that poor ratings will soon end Agent Carter at ABC. Why, you might be asking, is this show looking like it's on the chopping block? Basically, it's a result of poor ratings right now. Now, the article said 3.2 million people tuned in to see Agent Carter travel to Los Angeles. But the problem is, it just didn't have a chance with what it was going up against. The premiere of Agent Carter went up against a bunch of stuff on the CW. The night Agent Carter premiered, it was going up against a night of entirely new footage being previewed for the extended universe of DC movies over on the CW. By that I mean the Dawn of the Justice League preview aired, which showed a ton of sneak previews and hints at Batman v Superman Dawn of Justice, a new trailer for the Suicide Squad, and contained announcements for future DC heroes joining the Justice League. The CW block of programming basically killed Agent Carter's ratings that night. Additionally, Haley Atwell's been signed on to a new ABC pilot. It's entitled Conviction, and if it's ordered to series, she'd have to balance both shows. So Deadline is pretty much calling Agent Carter's renewal improbable and states it's, quote, probably going away. So let me fully admit right here, I'm one of the bad ones. I am way behind on this season of Agent Carter. I've watched about half of the first episode, the rest are sitting on my DVR. So if I were a Nielsen family, I'd really be hurting the series ratings. I'm going to get caught up at one point, and I have to say, I've always enjoyed Agent Carter. I thought season 1 was a fun ride, and Haley Atwell owns the role. Here's the problem, though. I know some folks who didn't have a chance to see season 1, and season 1 was only very briefly on Netflix, is what they relayed to me. I haven't seen it on Netflix myself. I went to canistream.it, which is a site I go to look up where I can stream things, and Agent Carter's not available with any subscription service for people to watch. You can download and buy individual episodes from iTunes, Vudu, and Amazon, I want to say, but there's no subscription service where you can watch it. It's incredibly difficult to find a place to watch season 1 of Agent Carter if you missed it. And it's really tough for people to get caught up then. There's not a lot of people that want to jump in on a second season of a show when it's built upon the mythos of what started in season 1. And I have to say, the fact that it's not readily available on Netflix now really surprised me, because I've seen Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. on Netflix. I've caught up on a couple episodes I wanted to rewatch on there before. So, in part, I think it might be going away just because new fans don't have an easy way to jump on board. That being said, I'm really shocked we got it as a TV show to begin with. It's had a good run. It re-emphasized the fact that Haley Atwell is awesome in the role, and I've got a little comfort I can take out of this in the fact that I'm sure we'll see her in the MCU movies some more. And heck, if Agent Carter goes away, maybe we'll get some flashbacks in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. that shows more Peggy Carter scenes. And I guess if you have to try and put a silver lining to the fact that this show got canceled, it does open up a time slot for the rumored Mockingbird TV show that's going to spin off of Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. It could air in place of Agent Carter. So my featured story this week, it really probably is not going to surprise anyone. It's Deadpool. If you've listened to some of my other podcasts or seen me talk on Twitter, you know that I've enjoyed Deadpool. I know he's a little crazy bit of a character not everyone gets. But here's the story. Deadpool is basically crushing the box office. There's rumors this sequel might have been greenlit. Let's talk about the crazy box office numbers that Deadpool's pulling so far. Deadline has reported the film isn't just surpassing its initial box office projections, it's absolutely crushing them with an estimated $47.5 million for its opening day. That's huge. A February release, $47.5 million for a rated R movie. Just stop and think about that for a second. Who would have thought that? Here's where it gets really interesting. That opening day figure puts the film on track to make somewhere between $115 to $123 million for its opening 3-day weekend. And when you factor in the Thursday night premiere, we're looking at something between $129 to $136 million for a 4-day weekend period. Holy crap, guys. I mean, I am a big fan of Deadpool. I never expected that. Let's be honest. Nobody expected that, I don't think. It's surpassed all the expectations. From a personal standpoint, I went to go see the movie Friday night. We got there a little late for a 7:30 showing, so we ended up going to an 8 o'clock showing. And even when we walked into the theater at about 7:20, 40 minutes before the showing, there was maybe about a third of the seats taken. By the time the previews started rolling, there were barely any open seats in that theater. And it seemed to be the same way in the other theaters from the way people were talking. When we left the theater after our showing, there was a line at the door of people wanting to come in and then go see Deadpool. So the buzz is there. People are going to go see this movie. There are butts in seats. It's fantastic. What's also really interesting is a lot of people are theorizing that there was a budget of about $58 million for the Deadpool movie. So basically opening weekend, they're going to double what their budget was. They're already in the green after opening weekend. That, fantastic news for them. Right now, Deadpool is expected to shatter the February opening weekend record, which was previously held by a little film called 50 Shades of Grey, which took in about $81 million for its opening weekend. It was $93 million on a holiday weekend, so a long weekend. Considering that Deadpool is rated R, the numbers are huge. I mean, that's the big thing. You've cut your audience base by a huge chunk, and people are still going to go see it. It's great news. So here's the other rumor of what I originally had. The rumor that came out on Thursday, I want to say, is that 20th Century Fox has been so confident in the Deadpool film, a sequel has already been greenlit. Now, bear in mind, there is no official confirmation as of my recording date on this. According to The Hollywood Reporter, Deadpool 2 will see writers Rhett Reese and Paul Wernick back to pen another adventure for the Merc with a Mouth. However, there is no word yet if director Tim Miller is going to return, but the early reports are the studio is very keen on keeping everyone together. Now, if you've seen Deadpool, this is a very, very minor slight spoiler. There is a post-credits scene. The post-credits scene seems to hint at a certain character they would bring in for a sequel. So they already laid the groundwork if the film was successful for a sequel. Based on the box office numbers I talked at the top of this story, there's no doubt the film's been successful. I'm pretty sure that these rumors are going to be confirmed true. We'll see a Deadpool 2 coming in probably about 2 years, bringing back everyone we had in this one. And I, for one, can't wait to see it because the best way to put it, this is not the greatest film ever made. It's not. But it is a darn fun ride, and you just enjoy yourself in there. It's not the greatest story in the world, but everything ties together. They make it so you can go, okay, the storyline's a little contrived. It's boy looking for girl, bad guy takes girl from him, has to hunt her down. That's great. But how they wrap that up, Ryan Reynolds' portrayal, the humor, the fight scenes, it just makes for a fun movie. You don't care if you've seen some of those particular riffs before in superhero movies. It doesn't matter. So my recommendation would be go see Deadpool, make the box office numbers even larger, and make sure this rumor comes true that we will in fact get a sequel. If you want more coverage on the Deadpool movie, don't forget, there's probably plenty of other shows over on the Gonna Geek Network that will be talking about this. I can tell you for a fact the next 2 episodes of the All Things Good and Nerdy podcast will do that. In traditional fashion, the first week a movie comes out on that show, there will be no spoilers, and then the ATG and crew will spoil the ever-living heck out of that movie in week 2. I would also not be shocked to hear mentions of it on the Legends of S.H.I.E.L.D. podcast, or even on the official GonnaGeek.com podcast, so stay tuned to the Gonna Geek Network. I'm sure we'll have plenty to talk about on this Deadpool movie. So that's going to make for a wrap on this latest installment of Nerd Alert News. It's going out on a good note. We had some positive news, we had some negative news this week, but as I wrap things up, I did want to remind you, if you want to get any more detail on any of the stories I've talked about, they can be found in the show notes for this episode. You can find the show notes over at shownotes.nerdalertnews.com. It'll take you directly to the page where the Google Docs are embedded. You can click on any episode show notes, see the script I write out for myself, and then click on the link itself to go and read the article for yourself. This link is also found on the MP3 file. You should be able to see that link in there and click on that. If you want to get in touch with the show, there's tons of ways to do so. You can head on over to nerdalertnews.com. You can email me directly, nerdalertnews247@gmail.com. Tweet at nerdalertshow, or head on over to facebook.com/nerdalertshow. Those are all great ways to get in touch with me. And like I said earlier, I would love to get your opinions on the Slade Wilson Deathstroke news for Arrow. And I would love to hear whether you're surprised that Deadpool might be getting a sequel after the first weekend release, or if you're just surprised, in fact, that its box office numbers are what they ended up being. I'd love to get some feedback on that, so please hit me up on that. So, I think that's going to wrap up this latest installment of Nerd Alert News, but don't worry, I'll be back soon with your next Nerd Alert. Bye, guys. You've been listening to Nerd Alert News. For more information, head on over to nerdalertnews.com. The music used in this show is produced by Kevin MacLeod and can be found at incompetech.com.